I'm gonna mute myself because we'll hear multiple things. So Vinny, why don't you go ahead and introduce ourselves as we get people on?
Okay, awesome. So if we are live, hi everybody. All right, 1 second. Okay, if you are live, hi everybody. Please, we are live on LinkedIn as well as YouTube. I hope you have the right links. If not, I'm gonna paste it shortly again in the LinkedIn channel. If you can say hi, where you're from, I would love to see what global presence we are getting today. So let's see. All right. So shortly, I will introduce the panel and.
All right, Vinny, we should be live now on both LinkedIn and YouTube. So hopefully we've got a little bit of traction here. So just, I think whenever we're ready, we can start the show. Awesome. Or we can continue talking about Quebec politics, which one do you guys ever prefer? So.
Let's see. There are some chats coming in, which I love. We have people from Arizona, Toronto, South Africa, wow, Amsterdam, Canada, Brazil. Interesting, nice. So I'm joining from San Francisco, live from Databricks office. So why don't we introduce our panel? I will start with Florian. Florian, just introduce yourself to the community.
Yeah, thank you, Vinny. Hello, everyone. So I'm Florian. I am in France, in Bordeaux right now. And I am data engineering manager at Back Market. So I'm working closely with data engineering teams. And we have a lot of data pipelines running using Delta Lake technology, mostly open source one. And I'm also a contributor to Delta RS, the Rust native integration of Delta Lake. And also I'm designing a bit of exploration with BigQuery to find a good alternative to have an integration between GCP, BigQuery and Delta Lake.
Awesome. Thank you, Florian. Amazing to hear what you are working on. And Ivana, next to you.
Yeah. Hey, hi everyone. I'm Ivana. I am based in Belgium, in Europe. I'm a data engineer working at Element 61, a consulting company based in Belgium. Working in my day-to-day job a lot with customers, building their architecture in the cloud, working on data pipelines, mostly with Delta.
Awesome, thanks, Ivana. Next up, we have Ryan. Ryan, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, hello everyone. I'm Ryan, a software engineer from Databricks. I'm mostly working on Delta Lake and in the past several years, and also previously I also working on structured streaming, the stream engine in Apache Spark.
Awesome, thanks, Ryan. Denny, next.
Hey, thanks very much. Hi, everybody. My name is Denny Lee. I'm a developer advocate here at Databricks. Longtime Spark and Delta Lake guy. And before that, you can either blame me or thank me. I don't know which one you want to do. I was part of the SQL Server team at Microsoft and also on the team that created a HD Insight. So that one you probably want to blame me. So my apologies. Back to you, Vinny.
That's a great history. Don't we have exciting panel here? And hi, myself, I'm a developer advocate at Databricks working in Delta Lake open source community. So that's about us. Let's get started with some questions. A few topics what you can ask questions about is anything related to Delta Lake. For example, we have recently released amazing features like performance improvements and merge. We have new features coming in, which are Z-ordering, data skipping. We have released and continue to release new connectors like Trino, Presto, Flink. So ask any questions about that. So while we wait for some good questions to come in, why don't we quickly get started with some updates on Rust? So Florian, why don't you provide like some updates of what Delta Lake community should look forward to? Any insights there would be appreciated.
Yeah, definitely. It's we have a lot of improvement into the Delta RS binding. So mostly we integrate the new Azure bindings, meaning that you will use a new crate for it. So it has been a lot of improvement for integrating Azure cloud provider with using Delta RS. And many things is coming as soon as we have some requests. So feel free to reach us. So it will be the nice way to improve or to provide more features into Delta RS. We are thinking about providing as well a PyArrow writer for the Python binding. It will make possible to write using the Python binding into Delta RS without the need of integrating Spark or have a dependency with Spark itself.
Awesome. That's a great update, Florian. So can you, for those who don't know, like, can you provide some inputs on like what Ether does and a little bit of what they can expect from the connectors, like a use case specific? Yeah.
Yeah, it's actually, I can use back market. We use Delta RS to read the Delta tables without having a cluster running, meaning that we can fetch a lot of metadata using Delta RS. You can also read the Delta tables, list files of the partition underline Parquet file using this library. And we can also provide a writer to write Delta tables or update in the Delta Lake tables without requiring Spark inside. So mostly the Rust binding is there, and we also have Python and Ruby 1. Python is the most advanced as of today, but we plan also to integrate many other programming languages.
That's awesome. So you said the cluster up and running is not required when you are fetching the metadata. So that means saving on cost to run compute. That's awesome.
Yeah, exactly. You can read, you can have a small data set if you want to look for exploration usage. I'm thinking about data scientist use case when you need just to look or have a small data set to work with without launching everything on the Databricks side or the open source with other cluster running with Spark. So mostly it's really good when you just want to explore with a small portion of the Delta table.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure, Florian, I missed a lot of details there. Happy to have like deep dive conversation later. That would be awesome for people to know. Awesome. So we have some other questions on the chat. Thomas is asking, anything on the horizon to help with the surrogate key problem? Current workloads are cumbersome. Anybody would like to give it a try? It's a question about surrogate keys.
Sure. I mean, I can probably tackle that. So I do want to call out there's probably a little bit of bias for my answer because we actually had and I'll post it. We actually had a Delta Tech Talk that actually explains how to work with surrogate keys within Delta Lake. And in addition to that, in case you're into Stargate SG1, there are plenty of our Stargate SG1 references to that particular session. But outside of going to geekdom, the one thing that I did want to call out actually is that as part of the roadmap, Delta Lake actually will actually be including an identity column actually. And so that is one of the things that we will, that's working down the pipe. And so combination of where we are planning to work on in terms of the community to address some of these issues, I think that will be helpful for the longer term thinking. For the shorter term thinking, honestly, and I think it's Thomas that went ahead and actually asked the question. The reality is, yeah, the problem is cumbersome, and it really does involve you figuring out which type of either hash or basically circuit key generation that you want to work with. And so honestly, I'm just going to give you the answer that we'll post the link inside there. Now, saying this, I'm not trying to avoid actually providing more details. It's just that depending on how you want to solve the problem, there are different answers. So please join us on the Delta user Slack. If you join us there, we can dive into those scenarios a little bit better. Okay, so hopefully that gives you some context on that. Oh, thank you, Vinny, for dropping in that particular video. That's quite helpful.
Yeah, thank you, Danny. Awesome, and that's what that was good answer. I think the next question is about what differentiates Delta Lake from competitor products like Azure ADLS and Snowflake. There are many answers to that, but Ryan, do you want to take a pick at question, answering that question?
Yeah. So the question is like, what's the basic difference between, like, for example, Delta Lake, ADLS, like a Snowflake, right?
Yeah.
So regarding ADLS, it's kind of a storage, like object store, similar to S3. For Delta Lake, we actually build on top of ADLS. So it's kind of, you can see, you can put your data on ADLS, but the Delta Lake will have a transaction log layer, which help you manage all the data on like a storage. So it's kind of a one level below like a Delta Lake for ADLS. For Snowflake, I think one major difference is like, for example, Delta Lake is an open source format, which so we basically document how to read or write a Delta table in our website. This is entirely open. And we also building a lot of open source connectors, like not just Spark, for example, Presto, Flink. They can also read directly using like a Delta format. And then you don't need to worry about whether, for example, similar Snowflake, if your data is stored in Snowflake, if you decide to use a different product, you probably need to move all your data out from Snowflake. But for Delta Lake, whatever platform you are using, you can easily just switch the engine without changing the underlying storage. Yeah, hope this answers your question.
Yeah. That was a good answer, and thank you. Anybody else would like to add anything?
I would just highlight the fact that the protocol MD is open source, is on Delta repository itself, and is a great help if you want to add anything related to Delta. It was the case with Delta RS, but it was the main source of information if you want to change or add a connector. So it's really the good place for the open source community to see what are the requirements, the guidelines, and the information if you plan to integrate something in it.
Yep, great. There's a question from Sean Collins, which is a part of the question. So Sean, if you can please ask the entire question in one chat, I would be able to help you out. Okay, moving on to the next question. So Jaydar is asking, is Hadoop installed on Databricks cluster by default? If yes, how is it going to work out for small files?
Okay, so let me try to dive in here because in general, let's try to limit our questions to Delta Lake specific questions. Okay, so, yeah. But I will answer this particular question. Okay, no, Hadoop is not installed on a Databricks cluster, so that's the easy answer. So that's why I didn't mind answering it. There is always a small file problem though. It doesn't matter whether you've got Hadoop or ADLS or GCS or AWS. The small file problem is rooted on the fact that the listing of files on cloud object stores is excessively slow. Don't forget, when you're dealing with cloud object stores, what you're doing is you're doing web-based REST API calls as opposed to bulk batch calls, which inherently will be slower. And so if you've got a lot of small files, you've got a lot of transactions, a lot of pings back and forth, communication back and forth, that will basically significantly slow the performance down. And so how Delta Lake happens to solve this problem, by the way, is, and Delta Lake does in fact solve this problem, is that instead of actually making you list the files directly, the actual files are inside the transaction log. So whenever Spark or Delta Rust or the upcoming Flink connector or the current Presto connector or any of these systems want to get access to Delta Lake, what it does is it reads the transaction log. By reading the transaction log, it basically gets the full list of files, so you don't actually have to use that really cost prohibitive listing of your cloud object store to get the list of files. Now, One other notion is that you do want to go ahead and optimize your file system every so often, i.e. compaction, because if you've got lots of little small files, it doesn't matter if you're listing it from a transaction log or even from from HDFS or cloud object storage, that's still too many files. And so what file compaction does, and Delta Lake already has that, which is the ability to do file compaction, is basically take a lot of small files, making them into bigger files. So that way it will actually significantly speed things up. Now, this will naturally lead to a question, which is, hey, but I heard that there's this thing called Optimize, and I would really love to have Optimize included in Delta OSS. And oh yeah, and also Optimize Z order. I really would love to have that. And the good news, we heard everybody's question on that. So we had a survey last year. And so the combination of the survey, also the feedback from GitHub, it was the overwhelming winner, to put it rather lightly, that we actually had to put Optimize in. So as part of the current Delta Lake 2022 H1 roadmap, I'm trying to be precise, though it's hard to say it all. But with the current roadmap that's targeted for June of this year, we are targeting for both Optimize and Optimize the order. Current timelines are approximately Q1 for Optimize and Q2 for Optimize the order. So yes, so that will then, in this case, help you solve the small file problem. Okay, so probably a little bit more than you're expecting, but nevertheless, I figured I'd give you the answer. So hopefully that helps.
Thank you, Denny. That was wonderful answer. I'll just add a little bit more information there. So I think there might be a underlying question as well that you were trying to ask, which is setting up Delta Lake. So I put a link for you to getting started on Delta Lake, as well as how you can manage the small file problems. There are different ways. You don't have to just use Hadoop. It's Delta X standalone, so you can basically have any configuration underneath for your storage systems, and then Delta Lake works on top of that. Awesome. And then there was amazing roadmap which recently got launched, and we are happy to have more discussions. I put a link in the chat, so please get involved in the discussions. Awesome. So moving on to the next question. All right, so there's a question about, would you recommend us an approach to metadata or schema management outside of manual scripting, particularly when handling schema changes? I'm thinking how, if you do a SQL Server DAC deployment, it largely handles schema changes for you. So it's a question around how we manage schema outside of manual scripting. Do you want me to repeat the question?
Oh, no, it's okay. I mean, Ivana, I think, did you want to try to tackle this one? Or did you want me to? I'm sorry, I wasn't sure.
No, sir. No, go ahead. It's fine.
Oh, okay, cool. All right, so the only reason I wanted to figure I could tackle this is because since I was formerly of the SQL Server team, I know a little bit about SQL Server. I can claim that. So Thomas's question is very prototypical, and that's a good thing, by the way, to prototypical standard DW BI type questions, in which how do you handle metadata and schema management, right? And so just like in SQL Server, and for that matter, other relational databases, the context at least is you're going to write DDL scripts or DML scripts, excuse me, and you probably save them in GitHub or some version control system, okay? And then that's how you manage that. And so there's two things when it comes to Delta Lake. First of all, Delta Lake actually has both schema enforcement and schema evolution. So whatever DML that you actually are writing, it will basically make the changes to the schema of your Delta Lake table, assuming you want it. Okay, in other words, you have to enable evolution to allow it to evolve. By default, it'll enforce this current schema. So if you try to put, like for sake of argument, 5 columns in on a 4-column table, it'll actually prevent that from happening because you don't want to risk accidentally corrupting your data. Now, to Thomas's question specifically about how to manage that, typically you would just take the DML scripts that you're using to evolve the schema, for sake of argument, inside GitHub. Now, you're saying, well, then how do I match those two? Well, what's really cool is that there's actually custom metadata that you can actually put within your Delta Lake transaction log. So a common practice is actually, as part of the custom metadata, is to actually link directly to your GitHub repo that contains the DML link. So inside the Delta transaction log, not only contains the fact that the schema changed, it also contains a link to the schema itself. So that way you just review the transaction log and can go get that information. So at least I've seen this happen pretty recently, more recently in terms of various customers have been doing this. So hopefully that helps answer your question.
Awesome. All right. Thank you, Danny. Moving on to the next question. So Ivana, this question is for you. So you are doing a lot of work around streaming. Can you maybe give us like few highlights on what are the some awesome features that you have come across, and why you are interested in working on those features? Yeah.
And just to add to Ivana, I want to over clarify. She's a data scientist initially, right? That's her primary. So the fact is, like, we've got a data scientist sitting with Delta Lake. So that, for me, I just wanted to call that out. Like, that's really cool. So Ivana, please tell us, why is a data scientist sitting here with us? Because that's pretty cool.
Well, Delta doesn't help only data engineers, but also data scientists. And also I do a lot of projects where data engineering is involved. So I want to keep my hands dirty with the data engineering stuff as well. So yeah, I do a lot of streaming, and for that, Delta is really the savior. Particularly there, one of the latest features about the change data feed feature there. I find it quite useful, because then I don't have to read all the data. If I have a stream, let's say the typical bronze, silver, gold in your data lake, and if I will have to read the changes only from the silver layer and get them into bronze and do some kind of aggregations, there I don't want to get all the data, because that can be a lot of data, and I would like to only read that the rows or the data that has recently been updated. And with this change data feed feature, I can easily get only those rows and then merge them into my gold layer. Yeah, that's one of that. And yeah, for the data science part, Delta really helps a lot on that front as well, to keeping all the data sets, all the features there, building easier feature store, etc.
That's
so
awesome,
I think
Ivana.
Delta is present in both fronts.
So I guess you touched upon all the layers, bronze, silver, and gold. And you as a data scientist understand that how that architecture really helps in setting up your pipeline well, and really helping that end use case, which is like, once data engineering is set up properly, then as a data scientist, you can go ahead and make use out of the data in a very, I think, in a curated manner, right? Because this
definitely, as a data scientist, I think it's the dream to have the data that you have as an input with good quality as possible. And Delta Lake helps us with that, so we can just read the data that the data engineers have prepared, and directly have the clean and high quality data.
That's awesome, Ivana. That's a wonderful insight coming from a data scientist. This is what data engineers do with Delta Lake. Awesome. Anybody else would like to add anything there for data science?
I mean, not to take up the show, but the one thing I definitely want to add is exactly to Ivana's point. I mean, it's garbage in, garbage out, right? Like you could literally have, if you, depending on which machine learning algorithm you're using, literally the sort order of the data coming in could literally change the hyperparameters and change the meanings of everything, right? So you really,
to add on that, you can build the most complex model on neural networks or whatever, Yeah, but the input data that you have, if you have good quality, even sometimes even the most simple algorithm can do the job.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's exactly to Ivana's point. So it's more focusing on the fact that you want to have that data reliability right underneath, so that way the machine learning you're running is actually useful and, God forbid, actually reproducible too.
So we touched on data quality, reproducibility, and having a clean slate Delta Lake for data science. There is one more question related to this, which Dennis is asking. He's asking, would you recommend to use dedicated buckets for bronze, silver, and gold layers for any reasons? There are so many questions, so many answers I could provide, but Ivana would love to have you answer this question.
Yes, I would put it in different buckets. I think there can be many different opinions on this. I prefer that they're separated, and sometimes that's also better in terms of security and governance reason. I don't know if someone wants to add to that, but I think it's better to have them separately.
Yeah, I can add a little bit more context. So for example, if you have like raw data, you don't want your organization to directly use all the data that's available. You have to have some kind of governance. So when the data is coming in, it's always good practice to curate that data in the first bronze layer. Bronze layer, you can just use it for raw data as is, but then apply the transformations as well as, get first PII data and, regular use data that can be separated, and then use like specific buckets for use case that you are trying to solve. For example, if you have like 10 different teams working on different use cases, it's always a good idea to have separate buckets in the goal layer where you can curate the data, do the merge of tables and all that in like a specific use case manner. So hope that helps. There are a lot of different use cases which you can think of when creating your Delta architecture. Awesome. So I think that's a wrap. We are coming close to our office hours. I'm gonna paste some chat links in the chat so that you can keep continuing this discussion through various channels we have, either through Slack, Google Group, or GitHub. I love seeing how much engaged the audience is on the chat. So thank you for that. Any closing words from the panel?
My only call out is join us for the Delta user Slack if you've got any questions. I think that's been posted in LinkedIn and YouTube, because I'm sure you all have other great questions. We'll be here in another 2 to 3 weeks to answer your questions again with a new panel. But between now and then, please join us in Delta user Slack.
Yeah, thank you all. Thank you, panelists. That was an amazing discussion. Thanks for answering all the wonderful questions. See you in 2 weeks. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.